let me introduce you and then we'll dive in, okay?
Yep.
All right, Grand Agent Muzzy Casher, not Mazzie. Your publicist said it's
Mazzie,
Muzzy.
Mazzie, Mazzie, Mazzie.
Muzzy,
Yeah.
activist, artist, community leader from Philly. You've got some cool stuff coming. You've been teasing music on Instagram, and there's this whole America 250 that you're talking about with your campaign. I've only heard the samples based on what's on Instagram so far, and it's got this really sick um, golden era of hip hop, like early 90s vibe, but with a modern tone. There's definitely a hint of 2026, but it's a throwback to that era, which makes sense because that's kind of like where you come from. Uh,
Yeah.
does that sound accurate for you?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, where you come from, you're always gonna bring it with you. So I believe
Mhm.
it's an aesthetic, but it's also a value, right?
Yeah,
It's the values from the way I received and was indoctrinated into hip hop. That's really what I carry. So I think that's what you hear, maybe more than an error, right? You hear the value of the peace, unity, love, having fun. Those pillars and those tenets of the founding of hip hop. So yeah, always.
nice. I'm happy you
Yeah.
said love there. So we're going to talk about values, and I'm going to kick that off in a second. But I was kind of going through my notes, and I always do a little bit of research before the chats. I like to do kind of like half blind, half researched because it makes for just a better conversation. I feel if you're
Mhm.
too researched, then it's too talky. So get this, a couple years ago, I don't know who the publicist was, but we apparently got pitched to premiere a music video for Name, the trio that you were a part of. And the song was Can't Say Love Enough. And I was like, well, no
Mm,
wonder I said yes to that because I'm all about love and logic. And so that's kind of where I got introduced to you and to your music was through that. Isn't it
okay.
funny how someone can know you from the beginning, but then someone can just jump on the journey at a different point?
Right. Absolutely. And Name is at that time, I guess it was last year, that was the group of brothers who I first started making records with in '94. Name was the group we ran around the streets of Philadelphia until we reached a crossroads where it became evident I was the only one really pursuing a career as a recording artist. And so
Yeah.
then, not even parted ways. I just kept going, right? And I kept going with a lot of what I learned working with those guys. One, my brother Ozzie Jones, even then was a theater director. He was the assistant artistic director at a historic African American theater here in the city called Freedom Theater. And so he really taught me how to be comfortable and expressive and emotive on stage. And then the other brother in the group, Mr. Sism, Larry, was someone I was in audio production school with. And so together we learned how to record the story. And then with Ozzy, we learned how to deliver it on stage. And so I've carried that with me. That was training for
Mhm.
becoming grand agent. And so that for us was like 30 years later, first time ever making a music video. We never did that back then because it wasn't as necessary or it wasn't as accessible, for where we are and what the technology and all the costs associated at that time. So that was kind of us celebrating actually our origin story is the story that we told in the record. I basically said, let us all write a verse about what coming together meant for us and how it has shaped us. And that was, can't say love enough.
Yeah, I appreciate
Yeah.
that. It actually sparked a thought, which I'll share in a second. But we're talking today because we're having a value session. V13 is lead speak for life, as I mentioned earlier. It's not just a V and a one and three. 13 started as a baseball number for me, and then turned into this whole deep dive into a much greater understanding of the universe. 13 lunar cycles, in a year. There's so much more than meets the eye out there.
Hmm.
Um, So the values are things that I live and die by, which I believe should be what my companies follow and what we as a society could follow. And that's why I love having these sessions. And you've picked a couple that resonated with you that I want you to tie into your amazing campaign that you have going on right now. But first, let me drop this. Through love, we find ourselves. Through love, we see ourselves in others. Through love, we unite, not divide. And then once united, we see the darkness, anti love, that's trying to separate us, and we cast that away. That's the vibe
An
I'm getting from your album and from the music and your campaign.
Anti-love, I like that. That's hateration.
So talk to me
I
a bit
like
about
I
this.
like anti-love, yes.
Talk to me about the campaign and this cool stuff you got going on and how it factors into
Absolutely,
values.
absolutely. So, okay, so my 2 that I picked, I wanna make sure I Vanguard and Vision, right?
Mm,
They for me, they go hand in hand. And just the summary, Vanguard, leadership and visionary thinking, and then the vision obviously comes, the root of visionary, and then ambition, right?
mhm,
And so what I've been doing, counting down 30 days to the 4th of July here in this 250th anniversary of, the founding of the United States. I have done work in this city, which is the place where all these documents were signed and all this history is enshrined. I've been working the past 5.5, 6 years with a group that I co-founded, a nonprofit called Philly Truce. And Philly Truce's mission is to drive the impact of sustainable Black manhood. And how that became our mission is here in Philadelphia, the birthplace of the United States, the African American community, is about 40% of the population, the largest ethnic group. For at least the past 20, 25 years, the mayor has come from our community, many of the police commissioners, much of the city council at this time.
mhm,
And our community makes up an overwhelming majority of those incarcerated, those on either end of gun violence, which is how I got into the fray. In year 2020, late 2020, a classmate of mine from high school and myself ran into each other, and we started talking about how they were counting up to, oh my God, we're close to 500 homicides, and the news was running it like a score. It was crazy, and we started talking, and we had remembered that in 10th grade for us was 1990. There was also
mhm,
500 homicides. And so one thing led to another, and Philly Truce became, and it took off. And that immersed me deeply, being in a nonprofit that focus on, which is basically public safety.
mhm,
There's a lot of work and a lot of conversation and a lot of engagement with city and state government because they provide a lot of funding to organizations that do this kind of work. So this is all the setup to how we get here today. And so last year I'm looking at all our stats and I'm looking at all our history with the number one cri- cru- critical crucial stat that I always hung on was a 50-year average of 350 homicides, whereby 85% of those perpetrator and victim were Black men. And I'm like, how is it in the city where we represent the majority, we hold so many seats of power, we have not been able to, as a community, heal and move
mhm,
forward? And, I knew from prior the bicentennial back in 1976. I was only one, but it lasted for years, and you knew what it was as a kid.
mhm,
And I'm like, I know this is coming. I know the American narrative and how they're going to shape and frame everything. But knowing that this city, with all of these stats and all of this demographic that I just laid out, how can I not do something that will say to the world, hold on, do you know where you're really coming? Do you know what really this city is day to day? And so I launched a campaign with the nonprofit, A Year of Brotherly Action, and it was basically extending our mission into centering our men, and by our men, by proxy of our men, our community, into the story of celebrating this 250 years. And so we ran that campaign over the course, and as we came closer and closer to this day that's coming next week, obviously bigger events, FIFA, more attention to the typical stuff, the American history, and one of our crucial culminating events, we kind of had to um, cancel because there was more city services and support for those things and not for the things that the community was putting together.
Mhm.
And so I just returned to my music, my other way of expressing myself. And so I said, how can I essentially co-opt this moment? How can I bring some energy back to the mission? And so I started calling myself the official rapper of America's 250th birthday because I had a pretty good feeling that nobody else would be thinking about it, because that's what I found in 2025. Nobody was thinking about it. And so with that, I tied in this idea of, consolidating the power of hip hop. Listen, for the past 50 years of this 50 plus, hip hop has been slowly, gradually, and then suddenly becoming like the main vein of pop culture, right?
Yeah.
And unlike prior eras, maybe with rock or maybe jazz, there have been quite a few hip hop success stories, meaning some artists have escaped with their fortunes, some have escaped with their catalogs, in prior iterations of this kind of, marketization of our things that start in the streets. We don't usually make it out with that much. And
Mhm.
so I'm thinking, we're 40, we're 50 years old. Some of us are multimillionaires, some of us are billionaires. Um, is there an appetite now for, a collective hip hop, right? Because hip hop is actually transcends race and a few of these other things, right? Hip hop, uh, economic and political agenda. Like, do we have the will and the wherewithal to move from community to constituency? And so that essentially is what this campaign has been about. And it's been an interesting journey. I've learned more than I've gotten direct feedback or engagement in posts, but just from being more intentionally immersed in social media than I normally would be, I'm coming away with some pretty good ideas and understandings of where we actually are. So
That's
that's what it's
amazing.
about. Yeah, yeah,
So you've
yeah.
got this amazing history. You've tried to impact change on many levels in your hometown. You kind of see a path forward, or at least you're trying to carve a path forward to unite people more. And then this musical project almost is like an extension of that. It lets you get back to your creative roots, and as you said, keep furthering that cause.
Absolutely. So the project itself. So on next week on the third,
Mhm.
Friday, July 3rd, we're gonna release Happy Fourth. Right? Happy Fourth is my official Fourth of July anthem, and you know, it's confrontational, right? It's kind of like Happy Fourth of July, Happy Fourth, you lie. Happy Fourth, thank a black person today, right? And so for me, what, why I was, because people tried to talk me out of it, but why I was sure that my mission had to be driving the impact of sustainable black manhood is because what I learned in this city is that if our community is the largest just in terms of numbers,
Mhm.
and we represent, the group struggling with the greatest issues, poverty, violence, poor education, how are we going to improve the city without directly addressing the issues of this group? It really is not possible. And when we extend that to the bigger American, like dual narrative we always have going on, right? All men are created equal and unalienable rights and da 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 da. And you sell that, but at the same time, you really have a parallel thing going on, which for me really amounts to, there was never really a exit strategy for slavery. And so although it went away in a certain form, we always wrestling over, probably what some people would consider the Negro problem, right? And
Mhm.
we never gonna, and this is what I want people to understand really. If they really truly desire this more perfect union, if they really truly desire America to be what its stated mission is, you're never going to get that until you address these issues with the African American community and with the Native American community, right?
Yeah.
Because it's too duplicitous, right? And you're never going to have peace because we're going to always be nagging for what you said this is about, right?
Mhm.
So if you really want peace, we need to look at these things and be honest about them and say, yes, we need to make repair. And then once we make repair, right, adequately, then we could probably really look at what is really post-racial, right? But until how can I say it? Like you, Chris, from personal relationships, right? You can't get past certain things with your wife or whatever
Yeah.
until you have them out, right? And so we're in a relationship that has to have these conversations and that has to have these amends made or we'll
Mhm.
never get forward. So if anybody feels like, slavery was so long ago and why are we still talking about, listen, bro, I had a grandmother whose grandmother was a slave. It's not that long ago. And if you really do the knowledge to all the scientifical data on, generational trauma, and we don't even got to go into that. It's real, and you could tell it's real because we still bitching about it, right?
Mhm.
If it wasn't a thing, we wouldn't be bitching about it, and we're not just bitching because we want to be bitching. We want it resolved. And if
Yeah.
America is going to be what America says it is, this is what we got to do. So I'm gonna end with this: if you pick up the guy at the bottom, right? If a rising tide lifts all ships, or whatever that analogy is, right? America as a country, until it gets down and picks up the dirtiest, most in the mud guy, we're not going to rise as a nation and we're not going to stabilize. The problem is we've been sold, and many believe that it begins and ends with money, with
Mhm.
wealth, with means, with access. And if that was the case, we would all be happy with the current state of things. But actually, the current state of things is the volatility and the fissures in the foundation are really showing like never before. And
Yeah.
if you want to have something new, you got to do something new. And one thing America has never done is say, you know what? We're going to pick this guy up and we're going to prioritize this guy. And for me, I don't see any other way forward, truly forward.
I don't disagree. I mean, you said so many things there. I got like a million comments that I have to make, but like I don't disagree. I think in order to heal, you have to first feel and then you have to fucking deal. And most of the world, this isn't just an America problem. This is, I think, a problem that impacts many countries the world over. Most people haven't dealt with things. And I don't know if that's like a America issue or a community issue, or if that's like a global top-down control issue that many people are talking about now. It's systemic and it's intentional, and it's not just the Black community. It's like anyone that's not part of their, their team. I don't want to get off topic, but I agree with you. I think that we need to heal, and it happens through dealing with the shit that's there. It's like a relationship. You mentioned it, right? Like if I don't acknowledge my wrongdoing with my partner and then communicate with her and then say I'm sorry, and try to do better, I'm not going to heal, and the things will not get better. What's your perspective? This is always a curious one for me because I grew up colorblind in the sense that I had like musical influences across every like thing you could think of at a young age. I'm in Canada. I don't know if this is a Canada thing or a global thing, but like my best friends where we would like rip on each other and have the best time were from everywhere. Black, Muslim, Jewish, Polish, Irish, like it was everything. I'm sure I'm missing a whole pile of them, but we didn't care. None of that was ever a thing. It was about the character. Like who is Gonda? Is Gonda cool? Is he showing up? Is he be kind of respectful? Do we have fun with him? He's saying crazy shit, but like that's just what he's saying. That's not who he is. My question for you is I like to live presently. I believe that through gratitude, you live presently. If you're living in the past, you're living in regret. If you're living in the future, you're living in anxiety. How do you envision or see your people's struggle where it's like there is the past and the past was brutal and we want to pay attention to that, but we can't live there in order to get to a better future? How do you balance that?
That's a great question. The way I balance it, and I could really only speak for myself, right? We can maybe look at some numbers and see, hey, Mazzie did this and his group did that, and we impacted these lives in this way. But I really can only speak for myself. And the way I deal with it is this. Presently, there are ramifications um, of that past, right?
Yeah.
And 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 I feel you wholeheartedly because spiritually, psychologically, right? I do have to stay in the moment, right?
Hmm.
I'm not living in the past to look at a present condition and then trace its root or its source to a policy or a law or a cultural norm of a bygone era, right? That to me is not necessarily living in the past. I told you in the beginning, I live in a city that is very, I don't know if this is still the thing, right? But for many years, we were identified as the poorest big city, right?
Hmm.
I just saw an article today how some city council guy and his wife, a high up city official, um, kind of gamed a retirement thing to pocket like 750 grand and still not retire, right? So like this is the city, right?
Hmm.
And how, how do I answer that other than to say I have an inner compass, right?
Hmm.
And the way I try to keep my inner compass accurate for me is, being good relationship with my wife, being good relationship with my kids, being pretty good relationship with my community. Like even those people I just mentioned, like, I know this guy. I know both of them. Not very well, but I've had to work with them. Now, this is a issue where I could look and see, well, how could I address this, right? Now, some people will go on Instagram and they'll say, look at this, these crooked motherfuckers, da 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 da, right? Some will say nothing. Some will, um, you know, try to understand it, right? Eh, eh, my way is to do, or I guess as Gandhi says, be the change I want to see,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? And so if I wanted to address that situation, and I'm gonna stay on that because I just read it in the news, I guess I have to gauge how important is that to, the big picture I want to achieve. If it is, then I have to find a way to address it kind of lovingly, right? Because you can't
Yeah.
browbeat people into change. We just know it doesn't work. So how do we do these things lovingly? And I think for me, what I found is the most loving thing I can do is say, listen, I'll prove to you that I believe this by doing it,
Yeah.
right? If it works, great. If it don't work, cool. I don't have a problem with that. So, and I hate to say lead by example, but I would never ask anybody in terms of a movement or a revolution, if you will, or just trying to do something different, I would never ask anybody to do something I wouldn't do, right?
Yeah.
And that's really the best answer I have. I don't know that it answers exactly what you asked me, but what I can do is look around. I've been, like I said, I've lived other places. Even from right here, I can study other things and I can say, maybe this could work here, or maybe
Mhm.
this could work for our people, or maybe this could work in this city or in this community. And if I feel compelled, I'll give it a try. And if people see that and they latch on, then maybe we're incrementally heading somewhere. I guess the number one thing is that I do keep myself mindful that I do focus on my community. We are in a, we like in a 500-year hole we're climbing out of, right? If we just
Mhm.
start with Columbus and all of that, like we're in a continuum of getting better, right?
Yeah.
And that's how I think I reconcile the past and the present and the future thing. I may live 70 years and, a guy lived 100 years before me and he did so much work. And we're just in a continuum. I think we just want to stay headed in the right direction. And I think when I or others feel the most anguish is when we get the sense that we're slipping back. Maybe not, how can I say it? Maybe not as a victim or at the hands of anyone
Mhm.
else's doing, but that we are slipping back and giving up gains that our
Mhm.
ancestors has made. And this is not just for the black community. This is the American family. Like we have all moved forward in a way, right? Because I believe very much that Europeans or if they identify as white or whatever, they want peace too, right?
Absolutely.
Right? They want peace. They tired of hearing this shit. They tired of white guilt. They tired of hearing about people like me saying that. But we have to do the thing that will give us the lasting peace, right? And that's
Yeah.
something that somebody told me. What when you have a tough decision, what is going to bring you peace? And you
Yeah.
decide from there. And it might be nothing but shit in between, but you know that the decision I made is going to bring me peace. And that's kind of how I operate. And I think that's how I address the past, present, future thing. Believe me, I don't live in a victim mentality, but I do believe um in a justice that is complete with amended behavior.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna I don't wanna put words in your mouth, but it sounds like pay homage to the past, understand where you come from, know that, respect the history, and learn that so that we can do better things now to make the future brighter. Don't dwell in the past and live in the past, but have a healthy relationship with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you don't learn from it, I mean, what was it for? And you reminded me actually on our website at Philly Truce, there's a kind of little credo about what is sustainable black manhood, and it's like always be pursuing useful education, right?
Mhm.
Personal knowledge, communal and family knowledge, right? And then maybe societal knowledge, something like that. I don't
Yeah,
have the words, but useful education, like shit that is going to help you first establish a course for your personal life, a personal leadership course, and then things that feed into that, right? Because the rest
yeah,
of it for us is like, no criminal involvement, no criminal justice involvement, no family court involvement, which baby mamas and all of that
yeah,
stuff, right? So no unplanned paternity. Always pursue your financial freedom legally. Really simple stuff that this is for me where the responsibility comes in, and maybe this answers your question. I always go to my community first. And
mhm,
basically, I'm saying, listen, we know what that system is, we know what's waiting for us. Let's not let our kids and really our sons fall into it. Because what we all know is easy to get in trouble and very hard to get out. I
yeah,
work with guys all the time coming home from prison, and they got these guys, not only do they got to see the parole officer, they gotta pay. It's crazy, right? So that that's probably my answer to the former question, right? Take
All of it.
responsibility first,
Yeah.
and with that, I think you can discern which of these bigger fights is worth it. Am I equipped for, or would I like to hitch my wagon to?
Yeah.
But if you can't take care of your family and yourself, especially in a place like this where all of this is emanating from, for me, you're going to end up in jail. you know,
Yeah.
because it's so many schemes out here, and there's more of that readily available than the opportunity you may have to look for, right? You may have to put a little bit more effort in for the opportunity. But if you want to go out here and make a few bucks in a wayward fashion, it's right there for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it comes
Yeah,
full circle back to the beginning of the chat where I said, you have to love yourself first, then you can love others, and then you can do things like come together and heal. Knowledge of self, love of self, acceptance of self, all that stuff is where it starts, and then you start to unite and form movements. You can't do it if the base isn't already healed. Uh, and we live in a world now where there's just I think it's by design, personally. We're so triggered about so many things, but I think those triggers are being placed in us. I had this really cool chat with Asian American musician who's kind of traveled all over. Her name's Mist. She's had a beautiful career, beautiful story, motherhood, cancer, like crazy. But we were talking about the idea of triggers, and she said, when you, Grand Asia, trigger me, that's about me, not about you. And
absolutely,
so we have to learn how to remove the triggers from ourselves. Just like heal
absolutely,
that shit, pull the trigger out, because then you can't trigger me because the trigger's gone. And then you know what
absolutely.
you and I get to do? We get to connect even deeper and better and then do better things together.
And those are the things people need to be taught. I mean, that right there is useful education, right? How to identify and remove the triggers, right? And what is
Yeah.
that process like? Because I absolutely agree. Just a little bit of self-disclosure. Like I feel like um I've always been pretty solid academically, right? Like I've been able to read, critically think, deduce, all of that stuff. Like really capable, a lot of self-instruction, which I'm really grateful for. But not
Mhm.
till I was about 35, 36 that I really understand the power of useful education of triggers. What are my triggers? How did
Mhm.
they get there? Right? Who put them there? Because then I need to evaluate my relationship with that person. And it's like a lot of us, we grow up and we start to investigate, well, damn, what did my upbringing really do to me, for me, on my
Mhm.
behalf or against me, right? And then you start to pick that stuff out and tease that stuff out. But that is a skill, right? That's a
Yeah.
process that I start to see, in the nonprofit world, and you start to hear a lot about this trauma informed this and trauma informed that, right? So you see mental health kind of moving a little bit more to the foreground, right? And so that is useful education, right? Because no matter what you do in life, occupationally, whatever your pursuit may be, or what you strive for financially, right? You can have a good life when you have a good grasp on who you are and what is safe and not safe for you. Like where you can go and not go and who you can interact with and not interact. Like that's quality of life right there, right?
Yeah.
And that is the love, as you said, that will then propel you to pursue the type of career that will give you the type of earnings that will give you the like. But it does all start with a sense of self-worth, and the sense of self-worth comes from the ability and capacity to love oneself. And so that is actually useful education, right? And
Mhm.
that is some of the stuff we do, with my organizations. Like every person that comes to us, it's about personal development, and that personal development is to immediately be able to go out and serve the community, right? So
Yeah.
it does work that way, in fact.
Reframe things, mental health, mental wellness, it's a very serious thing. It's something that's super important, but I love to just reframe it as mental fortitude or mindset, right? Like it's no different than the body. Go strengthen that stuff. The stronger it gets, the better it is. This all ties back really well to the last comment I want to make. And clearly Vanguard and Vision were the right values because you've got a lot of that in you. Um, I love this line. It's from one of the new tracks, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. This comes back to this love. It takes a heap of self-hate for you to stand there and refuse to tell me I'm great. So good, man. I heard that. I was like, oh, I went back 6 times just to make sure I wrote it down properly.
That's what's up. Yeah, that is from a song called Wasn't Gonna See Me or something like that. It's basically, samples the old dirty, the legendary intro from Triumph, and it's kind of just, just that. Like it's a statement of resilience, right? It's a statement of affirmation of my own self-worth, and when I present my own self-worth, I'm really looking to present it, not really personally, but for all black men in a
Yeah,
way, right? Um, because I think what we feel and what we're told, message wise, and this is another thing that kind of touched on the past, the present, and the future. I
exactly.
think even some of the current messaging reeks of past um images, right? The black man is a beast, he's a savage, and he's gonna go rape all the like, you know what I mean? Like this birth of a nation stuff, right?
Yeah.
And the saddest part, and why I keep coming back to this, is because, here in the United States, racism is not something that um we just suffer from, right? It's like we internalize it too. So we internalize the whole caste system, right? Black people do this, white people do this, uh, the Indians do the IT, the Jews are the doctors, and like it don't matter what group you're in,
Mhm.
we all internalize the same caste system, kind of, right? So
Yeah.
for me, it's very important to present like a black man who's articulate, a black man who is in a good marriage, a black, like all these things is like counter stereotypical things. And I wasn't always here obviously, but I do truly feel like I always been striving to be here, and I attribute that striving more than anything to the type of hip hop, the type of rap records that I grew up on. And so when you say, "Oh, I hear this," those are the values that you hear, just me recycling the way I was given it, because I can see how much it gave me, right?
Mhm.
And I'm fighting a different type of clutter, and right, like this message reaching a 14-year-old of today, um, for me, everything is possible, but I will also consider the realities of the current, media field and landscape, and just the sheer volume of it, right? So this is why I look for other ways, like direct through, community service, right? And then maybe I can have a conversation with a 14, 15-year-old, like, you might not hear my rap record, but you can hear my conversation about how I think that record you're listening to may be impacting your opinion of yourself or your idea of your options in life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You said a really interesting point there too. I mean, there's this saying in the crypto and online trader world, that's do your own research, right? I think that applies to all of life. You got to just do your own research. You got to learn, get knowledge. Knowledge is power. We've commented on that. You mentioned the caste system, and it's funny because I think that the caste system is different depending on what country you live in, but it's the same idea of a hierarchy and different groups of people, different cultures are, the slaves or at the masters, right? There's different people at the top, bottom, etc. All of it's, top down control. Uh, and you mentioned just now this concept of like the angry black man with the sorry, I'm butchering it, but what was the reference? I have something. There's a point, I promise.
Well,
The savage.
right,
Well,
the
yeah, so
savage and right, the uncivilized savage, and we
yeah, yeah, yeah.
found you in Africa, and it's like
Well, so
that.
this is my point,
Yeah,
is
yeah.
like, w I don't understand why people haven't clued in that, neo-Nazis are savages, and now the Muslims are called savages, or we're called if everyone's being called a savage and we're all savages, then why are you falling into this trap? And instead ask yourself, "Who's talking about that? Who's planting that idea? You are
Well,
not my
that
enemy.
well
It's the
that
person that's planting that shit," right?
and that's what I learned something when I really started getting into personal growth and development is like a lot of for me the first unwinding was of family dynamics, and
Mm,
and the people I work with would tell me, of course they know how to push your buttons because they installed them, right?
that's the trigger.
That's the trigger, right? So just like, you know, um, societally, the hierarchy, the triggers are installed
Yeah,
through media, through right, like you watch the news here, and a 14-year-old white kid does something and he's a boy, a 14-year-old black kid did something and he's a man. Like all these things, right? You see some white frat kids turn a car over and it's a different thing than if we are outright. It's language, it's narrative, and the narrative is what keeps the past alive,
yeah,
right? And if we buy into the same narrative that is the narrative designed to suppress us, well, then you can see why we got big problems. And that's not to absolve responsibility. It's just that, hey, we have to be mindful of that, and we have to inoculate our kids against that because it's not reality. And then the one other thing I want to say too is you said it earlier and it came to my mind. None of this stuff is usually person to person.
mm,
Listen, man, I've been a truck driver at different times. I go into every little white hick rural corner of this state and any other, and I have never had a foul interaction one on one in a place where I would think stereotypically I'm not safe here. But
yeah,
what happens is the big 30-foot thousand view, right? The master puppeteers, and then we need to pick a side. And then when it's time to pick sides, that's when I'm black and you're white and I'm a Republican and you're a liberal
yeah,
and I right. But when we get down to the one-on-one level, that's why I think it's important to keep saying that the healing is parallel to a one-on-one relationship, right? Because when we get down to a one-on-one level, rarely is it immediately foul just based on skin color
yeah,
or accent. It just rarely happens like that. You know what I mean? In my experience. Now, I live in the Northeast. Maybe it's different in the South. Maybe but when I have traveled the country and been in places where stereotypically you might have thought, "Hey, be careful." I just don't find that people are up for that one on one.
mhm,
You know what I mean? It's groupthink by and large. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Yeah.
Well, I mean, two things can be true at the same time, and just because you and I haven't experienced that doesn't mean it doesn't happen to other people. I mean, there's places we haven't lived or traveled to where it might be different than that, but that also doesn't mean that that's how it is. You can see one thing, it can be magnified, and then multiplied through media, etc., and then you think that that's the norm, even though it's not the norm. I don't know why I just got this crazy vision of like prison system, and you have all these different cultural groups that are clicking together, but it's for safety and security. And when you think about it, maybe we're just tribing up so that we do stay safe. But the only reason we have to is because there's someone controlling the damn prison at the top. You know what I mean? And if we
It's
get rid,
always right. There's always an interest behind it, right?
yeah,
There seems to be a very heavily vested interest in division,
mm,
right? I got a cousin, no, I'm sorry, not a cousin, nephew in a federal prison right now, and he was just telling me how, like, yeah, man, he has some Native American and African American, kind of combined ancestry, and he was just telling me, I talked to him maybe a week ago, how yeah, I clicked up with the natives because da 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 da, and he's like, listen, this is what it is. It's
mhm,
that, and so I'm like, so even if you wanted to, nah, I can't even really associate with the blacks because it's like, and this is a prison. This is like this is prisoner level governance now, right?
yeah,
It's like the programming is done. You know what I mean? If if
mhm,
if you got 10, 15, 25, 40 years to be in this place and this is what you're committing to, right? When there's a handful of people controlling this whole it's just like it is obvious at certain times and in certain moments, and then it's like you said, when my life is on the line, I really don't got time to think about how this is being orchestrated, right? Same like
mhm,
what I find sometimes, here, like we don't have time to think about your movement. It may benefit me, it may not. I don't really know, but my kids are hungry, right? You don't
yeah,
got time, and I think that's the benefit, of the elite ruling class. I think that's the benefit of the dissension and the division is that when you're struggling and you need to hustle, you really don't have the wherewithal to stop and say, why is this like this? Or if you
yeah,
do, you might hear it and know it's 100% true, and you're like, man, I gotta go to work.
yeah.
Period. You know what I mean?
I totally agree with you, man, and it's not easy, but I genuinely believe that I've been through a crazy 3+ years that I've talked about on this podcast many times before, and I just got to a point where I said, "Life's gonna keep piling on until I figure out how to not let that impact me, till I let what like, till I choose to let in what comes in, till I better understand myself, till I calm myself and educate myself more." And you have to do that. You know, I don't know what everyone's struggle is every day, and Lord knows a lot of it's difficult, but I had my 7-day-old daughter die in my arms on Father's Day last year, and
Mm.
I could have let that crush me. And don't get me wrong, it's crushing. I feel horrible, but I turned it into something that I can learn from, that I can turn into a positive. And that's just one of many things that befell me. Create the space in yourself for love and change and knowledge. Give yourself peace, even if it's driving that truck to work. I'm not talking at you, I'm talking the general we one.
Mhm.
That's the time when you can turn off the phone and turn off the bullshit and talk to yourself, talk to God, and see what is there, what's talking back. So, this nice short 15 to 30-minute session has been absolutely profound, and I'm so 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 happy that we got to chat today. What a great way to kick off my weekend. America 250. What do we do for the next 250? How do we, take the hip hop community, which may or may not be co opted at different levels as well, to use your word? Like, how do
Absolutely.
we how does good recognize good on a broader scale so we can actually impact change?
That the broad scale really is the challenge because I don't doubt, um, I don't I don't not see the values with which I came into the culture or hold in high regard. I don't see a lack of it. I just do see that because in some of the comments I get, it's like, uh, these rappers don't da, da," and I'm like, "Well, we're not just talking about the rappers, right? We're talking
Yeah.
about everyone who has produced and or consumed art under the umbrella of this thing hip hop, whether we the
Mhm.
rappers, the DJs, the MCs, the dancers, the graffiti, the right, and that's the part that has been co-opted, the what hip hop is, right?
Mhm.
And so I don't think there's no lack of um those who hold these values still in high esteem. I think the trick is a broad enough call to action, right? From high enough in the kind of arena of the respected,
Yeah.
right? And right, because we have icons who outsider will automatically say, "Oh, Jay Z," like somebody commented, "Jay Z don't know," and it's like, well, I don't know if you've been noticing, but a lot of the hip hop community is like, fuck Jay Z right there. Like a lot of
Yeah.
people are like, man, who is this guy? What you know what I mean? Like, and it's been
Mhm.
that way for a few years, right? So I think the broad, um, high enough, big enough, yet respectable enough, um, call to action. And what I know about envisioning things and walking into things is you don't really know because you don't really have to know how. You just have to start walking
Yeah.
in the direction, right? And that's what I started doing. I just started walking in the direction of, hey, I know we've impacted culture tremendously. I know that some of us have made shit tons of money and have escaped with it, right? I know a lot of us have gotten robbed too, like prior generations of artists.
Yeah.
But there is something unique about this movement, um, you know, in that largely still, and I see it changing, largely still the authentic experience of it has a black man at the center. When you're talking about rap music and rap music being the voice of the hip hop culture, right?
Yeah.
And so that has a unique value that we haven't really had before in the history of our trajectory, really for us as descendants of the formerly enslaved. Like you got to think about it. We're kind of in a continuum of moving from being capital to try to be capitalist, and that's like you know, and some of us are crushing it, right? I
Yeah.
mean, of course, we're generationally down the line, but so it's like when you take all of that into account, and then when you think about the influence we've been able to have, if you just look at the way mainstream America markets things, and like you'll see very street slang popping up in very corporate. It's like it wasn't like that before, 1990 something, right? And all I'm saying is like, look, people, look at what we've done and look at what we have. And I think even more importantly for people like me who really grew up right along with it, look where we are in life. We're 45, we're 50. These
Yeah.
are the years in which we really make shit happen for future generations. You know what I mean? Because if
Yeah.
you look at like all the crusty old the Mitch McConnells and the Lindsey Grahams and the Donald Trump, right? They really was getting busy 30 years ago to be where they are today.
Yeah.
And we have to appreciate that and look around and look at each other and say, listen, we can do a lot here. And that's really the conversation I'm trying to have people really really take to heart is consolidating this power for economic and political positioning and maneuvering.
Yeah,
And I would guarantee that with the state of things here, you know, if you want to talk about affordability, or I think probably affordability is something we could all get around, right? We could all rally around. If we would just look at two or three ways, two or three buttons we could push that really could do something about affordability, I think we could very easily see a coming together and a rallying um, of and I just use hip hop because it has transcended race, it has transcended ethnicity,
definitely.
it transcends party, it transcends a lot of things. It did a lot of the groundwork for us, right? Like, you know, if you ever study Christianity or something, like they'll say, well, it became easy to spread the word because the Roman Empire had already unified this region with a singular language, for example. So like we just have a lot of infrastructure is what I'm saying. We have a
100%.
lot of infrastructure.
Well, I'll take it a step farther and go back to the beginning of our conversation where I genuinely think that music is one of those things that can do that. So like hip
Yep.
hop, you're absolutely right. I'm not disagreeing with you at all, but hip hop is a counterculture movement that started because people wanted something better for themselves. Blues was similar. There was oppression. There was all kinds of shit that was happening. And they wanted to start telling the story. Punk rock, hardcore punk, those are the same things. You know what I mean? And so I think that maybe the grander vision here with Grand Agent is that we don't just take hip hop and try to find the like minded people. I'm going to say the common denominator because maybe common should be helping us with this. Uh, we need to find the good sees good within the hip hop community, but then also within the punk and hardcore and blues and et cetera, et cetera. And then just have all those communities come together. We need this like festival of all genres because this has never been, and I don't think ever will be, an us versus them, a me versus you issue. This whole
Absolutely.
time it's been us versus that.
And really versus ideology.
Yeah,
Because even, you know, I'm sure if I walked into a room with Donald Trump and Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg, they will all be certain that they're doing the best right thing,
yeah,
right? And and me and you would be them to them. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So so yeah, I feel you. It really is it is a human thing, you know? And
yeah,
I think me being born in this place, which is the birthplace of this place, which presents itself to the world as the place, it's just a very unique set of circumstances that I think we should be having these types of conversations. And so I figured if nothing else, I would start it to the best of my ability, and we'll see where it leads us.
conversation, words, lyrics, music. That's the vibe. This is not a value session, my friend. This is a full on episode of the podcast. uh, I'm so grateful for your time. This is why I do this because I want to learn, I want to grow, I want to better myself, and get to know really cool people within this world and community. And if you and I become friends, and you and I can vibe, and then we can maybe inspire one or two other people to have that same thought or to conversate from here onward, then we're doing our job.
Absolutely, and that is more than enough, right? If we started something, we planted a seed, right?
Yeah.
And that's sometimes the most that you can do. So, Chris, yeah, man, it's been great, man. I really appreciate it.
We are going to help to perpetuate the people first movement because really that's what it comes down to. And I'm so stoked to hear the album and to see where everything goes for you. Stay in touch. Let's see how we can help even more.
Absolutely. Thank you, brother. Take care.